I've got a few minutes left before work. I've already planted some peas. So in this time, in the last 15 minutes or so, I'm going to pot on this kale, which is a little bit behind. I need to get it out of these pots. So when you see, this is red Russian kale, and in particular when you start to see it change to a purple color, you know it's getting a little bit stressed and it needs to, at least in this case, be moved into a bigger pot so it has room to grow. I've shown in a previous video where I prick out, if I have more than one seedling per flat, I prick them out into separate pots. With kale you don't need to do that. It'll grow just fine when it's crowded. You can plant it extremely close in the field. You can do that with a cell. So I'm just going to put as many seedlings as I have per cell. They're all going in the same pot, and that's how they'll grow the rest of the season. Alright, now that that's all finished, I'm going to move them outside. Kale is very hardy, so since it's been out here in the greenhouse, it's one of the reasons I love to start seedlings outside. They're already more hardened off than they would be if I had started them inside because they've grown outside. There's been fluctuations in temperature. Even though they're inside the hoop house, at night it still gets relatively cold. I've had this low tunnel open for the last few nights, so it's not going to be a problem to put this kale outside. Other things like my watermelons, peppers, and tomatoes, those are still going to stay inside for a long time. But kale, lettuce, my onions are outside. Those types of things, they can go outside no problem. Alright, I've got a couple minutes left before I start work. I'm going to see if I can't start my comforter compost pile.
These buckets are full of compostable material that I've been saving all winter. This is an idea that I got from Will Bonsall, a legendary Maine farmer. I've heard Will speak a number of times at different venues, but this idea of saving compost material throughout the winter when the microbes that break it down are dormant came from his book, Will Bonsall's Essential Guide to Radical Self-Reliant Gardening. It's absolutely fantastic. I read it all the way through every once in a while. Great pictures and great idea from a guy who's been doing it for decades. The comforter compost idea is one from a book entitled The Complete Compost Gardening Guide by Barbara Pleasant and Deborah Martin. This is a book I picked up on a whim at a bookstore in Maine last fall, and I've read it several times over the winter. It's quite fascinating, especially for someone who's been composting successfully for years, to have new ideas introduced into my head and the garden. I'm giving this one a shot. Essentially, composting right in a garden bed, and using this year to break it down with heavy feeders like squash, and next year not having to till it in, but having very fertile soil. We'll see how it goes.
As you can see, the black flies are pretty fierce this morning, and it's time for me to get to work anyway. So I'm just gonna water one more thing in the hoop house where the black flies don't seem to congregate, and then head into work.